Cotton,豪華滅却
Hey, guys, welcome to my channel. This is my first what if, hope you guys like it. This is a story of what if Naruto was intelligent, or you can say smart or hardworking, etc. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, it will surely help me, and also it will notify you on my upcoming videos, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic. Thank you. Now let's start the story. Chapter 22. Wow, the previous chapter was a hit. First order of business, I would like to apologize to those who were against my bashing of Tsunade, but I've found that in the anime, she was let off way too easily. A shinobi of her caliber missing from the village is by all counts, a missing nin. I wanted Naruto to make her know how childish and petty she is being, before offering her a realistic perspective. Another reiteration is for those who think I am sticking too much to the canon, I am reminding you again. This fic was written to explore how the Naruto universe would be if Naruto was smart. I never said I would totally change the events. 3 days back, Tsunade Baki looked over with increasing annoyance as the meeting of Tsunade's advisory council went on. His growing frustration was mainly due to the tactless arguments, more like shouting, weren't arriving on any conclusive course of action. He tuned them out, instead choosing to focus on Temari's report of her brother's defeat. It was a shock of great magnitude to him when he had heard that Gaara had been soundly defeated. He shook his head mentally. Just great. We have a situation that requires us to act as quickly and decisively as we can, and these fools can't seem to agree on anything at all. It was quite fortunate that the sand had managed to work out a ceasefire with a leaf, but Baki knew that it was temporary at best. Konoha would not hesitate to retaliate if any of Suna's shinobi so much as scowled at them. Tensions were high, and Suna needed something to convince Konoha of their sincerity in drawing up a new alliance treaty. Baki cringed as he thought about the reports from the teams stationed at the Wind-Earth borders. More than average number of Iwa shinobi had been showing up. While not up to anything, Baki would bet anything that Iwa was testing their borders, looking for any weaknesses. In the worst-case scenario, Iwa would conquer Suna, which meant that they would practically be neighbors with Konoha. Given the history between those two countries, it could signal the start of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. With a sigh, he took a sip of his steaming tea to calm himself down a bit while still trying to think up of a way to regain Suna's military alliance with Konoha. Absently, he mentally recounted just how they lost. They invaded Konoha, Konoha forces were ready, Orochimaru attacked the Sandaime Hokage, Temari and Kankuro took Gaara into the forests, followed by the Uchiha. Gaara went crazy, unleashed Shukaku, stopped by a giant. The epiphany hit him with such force that he almost spat out the tea he was drinking. Almost scrambling for Temari's report, he flipped pages until he found what he was looking for. Gaara was cleanly and efficiently defeated by Uzumaki, or is it Namikaze, Naruto. There was the answer and the epiphany he was looking for. Namikaze Naruto. Son of the legendary Yondaime Hokage. A child of the Hokage, savior of the leaf. Pieces of a plan rapidly came together in a mind, forming a picture that was not the best solution, but perhaps the only solution they had at the moment. He stood up, clearing his throat to gather everyone's attention. Honorable members of the council, some new facts have come to my attention, and I believe I have found a solution to our current problem. He had the undivided attention of some of the most politically powerful people in Suna. He could not afford to go back now, nor could he afford to make a single miscalculation. As you may all know, Iwa is currently testing out our borders. Our only solution to this problem is to somehow regain our alliance with Konoha. This is the only way we can buy enough time to recover from the loss of our forces. This is where our problem currently stands. How do we prove we won't betray Konoha again? A twinge of satisfaction rose up inside Baki as he saw the winces from several of the council members, reminding them that they had indeed betrayed Konoha, falling into Orochimaru's manipulations. Mutters were rising as the members considered his point. Baki took a deep breath and relaxed. The next statement was going to create tides. If I may have your attention once more, he spoke over the mutters, silencing them, I am not yet finished. Before having an alliance with us, Konoha had an unshakable with another village, the village hidden in whirlpools. We need to procure back that level of an alliance with our former ally. Yoshin, one of the more senior members of the council and one of the people who Baki actually respected for his relatively sensible arguments, spoke up. How do you propose we do that, Baki? Baki stared dead in his eyes. We follow the same procedure that they did, to achieve what they were able to achieve. Seeing some confused faces in the council, Baki elaborated. The alliance between Konoha and Uzushiogakure no Sato was sealed by a marriage between the Shodai Hokage and a woman named Uzumaki Mito. The alliance lasted for decades, until Uzushiogakure fell to the combined attack of Kumo and Iwa. We can use the tradition to regain our alliance, which might be stronger than our previous one. He was pleased to see that some of the members were actually thinking upon this. However, one of them stood up, almost foaming at the mouth. Hiroto Renji was someone who always made Baki wonder just how he managed to get on the council. He was a hot-headed person, exploding over the smallest of arguments and had none of the tact that was required to play the incredibly subtle game of politics. Also, he took utmost glee in pointing out faults at other members, while he himself never participated actively in any argument. Baki suspected that Renji feared looking too stupid. You can't possibly be serious. Like you said only moments ago, he sneered while saying, we need to recover our forces from the invasion. Which means, we need every shinobi we have. Why would we offer one in the first place, and why would they accept in the first place? Baki resisted the urge to rub his head at the moment. It would seem rather rude. I thought it was quite obvious, council member, that given the history between the two, Konoha cannot afford to have Iwa at their doorstep. Before Renji could blow up once again, another member spoke up, the slightest hints of irritation in his voice. Just what are you trying to tell us, Baki? Baki picked up the report written by Temari of the fight that took place between Naruto and Gaara. I will summarize this for you, as you all don't have this and it would take a long time for everyone to read this. Temari stated in her report that Gaara was, quote, soundly defeated, by a single genin, even after he had fully manifested his Biju. He almost rolled his eyes at the exaggerated reaction that followed. She states that Uzumaki Naruto, the aforementioned genin, could create water out of thin air and listen to this carefully, flash to places faster than she could even begin to follow. He briefly put the report down to add his own point. When I say flash, I mean it in the literal sense, council members. He resumed from where he had left off. He then summoned a massive, dark blue fox of all things, with 7 tails, that was almost as large as Shukaku. Baki looked up again. Now, we don't know why Uzumaki has a summoning contract for foxes, so, could it be that he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi? Everyone turned to look at the council member who said this. Baki thought hard about how to reply. The speculation was actually quite considerable. Why else would someone be able to summon foxes? It could be, Baki carefully said, slowly as to emphasize the point, but we don't have any evidence to substantiate that speculation. I have to stress on this council member, do not hold onto that speculation. For all we know, the boy could have stumbled upon it by accident. As I said, there was nothing that pointed towards Uzumaki having the Kyuubi inside him. Not even a wisp of demonic chakra, as is the trademark feeling everyone gets when near a Jinchuriki. Baki was very uncomfortable with this topic, so he decided to move on. Moving on, a relatively recent report suggested that he is apprenticed to Jiraiya of the Sannin. They were both spotted traveling together through a town. Yoshin once again raised a valid argument. It could be that they were simply on a mission together. Nothing you say points towards the claim of being an apprentice. Baki conceded the point with a nod. Indeed, it could be that as well. But keep in mind that in the past, no reports have ever stated that Jiraiya-sama needed someone with him on a mission, given how powerful he is. Why would he allow anyone to travel with him unless they were being trained or taught by him? Also, he was highly proficient in Fuinjutsu, just like Jiraiya-sama is. Yoshino nodded thoughtfully and sat back. Baki continued with his previous statement. As I was saying, he seems to be apprenticed to Jiraiya-sama, and speaking of apprentice, I believe you are all aware as to who the last apprentice of the man was. Thankfully, everyone nodded. Baki rested his arms on the table. This was the crux of his argument. To those who were not present at the Chunin exams, which was everyone, excluding himself, Uzumaki Naruto has been revealed to the world as Namikaze Minato's only child. He dropped the bomb on them, waiting to see their reactions. And they were just like he expected them to be. Most of the members' jaws dropped in disbelief, some even choking on air. A few sensible members such as Yoshin were taking deep breaths, trying to force rational thought as to how this was possible. Renji was the only one who was shaking his head, whispering under his breath, "This can't be, this can't be." A member asked after regaining their wits. "Do you have any evidence to substantiate your claim?" The question was asked slowly, for the member still had difficulties believing the latest revelation. Baki wordlessly picked up his file again and flipped to the photo of Naruto. He then put up the file on the table in such a way that everyone would be able to see. It only took a moment for everyone to connect the dots. Yoshino shook his head in slight awe. "Looks like you were right, Baki. He really does look like his father." Baki added with a smirk, "Not only that, but he can use Hiraishin no Jutsu just like his father, but what does this have to do with us regaining our alliance?" Baki grinned as he put his proposal forward. "It should be quite obvious by now. We offer Temari in marriage as a gesture of good faith on our part." Renji frowned. "Why Temari? She is the daughter of our late Kage, and is quite skilled. Couldn't we offer someone less significant?" Baki looked at Renji, fully intent on shutting him up. "Believe me, council member, when I say this. If we are going to offer a marriage proposal to someone as important as Namikaze Naruto, we have to ensure that the person from our side is of equal status as him. Naruto and Temari, both are children of a Kage. Any children that would result from their marriage would become formidable shinobi when they grow up. We can insert a clause stating that their eldest child must become the liaison for both of our villages after becoming a Chunin." Baki could have said that their eldest child should be married back into Suna, but they were in no position to make any demands from Konoha. It was best to stay on the safe side and make him her liaison after becoming a Chunin, or a dual citizen. Also, the news of the Namikaze having an heir would have probably reached Iwa by now. Given how much the son is like the father and how Iwa feared him, their safety could be guaranteed. Or, Iwa would probably try to assassinate Naruto before he became too powerful for their liking. But that was a risk they had to take. Regain the alliance, or face Iwa alone. The council pondered over Baki's proposal. It was more than enough to gain back their alliance. Perhaps Konoha was benefiting too much from this, but they had no choice other than to offer Konoha as much as they can. Like Baki, they came to the conclusion that they really weren't in a position to demand anything from Konoha. But they would have a powerful ally once again, with powerful shinobi in their command. Soon, everyone came to an agreement and the decision was made official. The offer was sent, proposing a marriage contract to the Konoha Council. All they had to do now was wait. "What did you say?" The yell echoed throughout the building, the rage in it clear for all those who hear it. Temari gave her hottest glare yet to Baki, who was standing right in front of her and her siblings, doing his best not to show any nervousness or fear. Unsurprisingly, Kankuro found himself hiding from his sister's wrath, behind the back of his younger brother. The former was quite old. Kankuro had hid from his sister a number of times in the past, for he was quite scared of her. Whenever she got angry, he was her usual outlet for that anger, for neither of them dared to get close to Gaara. Only the spot to hide had changed. Ever since they had returned to their home, Kankuro had seen an incredible change in Gaara. Gaara had stopped threatening everyone who came in his sight, and wasn't radiating bloodlust constantly. Perhaps the best thing was that he hadn't killed once upon his return from Konoha. However, the one part that didn't change was that Gaara never got afraid of Temari when she was enraged. Kankuro knew Gaara had no grasp of how to interpret certain feelings, but time heals all wounds. Anyway, the point was that his sister was enraged beyond all belief, and he was using Gaara as a human shield. Temari was not in the best of moods as she stood in front of her sensei. Carefully reining in her anger, she managed to keep her voice steady as she spoke. "Why are you doing this to me?" Baki kept his face carefully neutral, trying not to show the pity he felt for his soon-to-be former student. Pity was the last thing Temari needed right now. This reaction was not exactly unexpected. In fact, I was more worried about how Gaara would react. It's nothing short of a miracle he hasn't used sand burial on me already. He took a deep breath and began his explanation. "This is a direct order from the council itself, Temari. We need this to cement our alliance with the leaf once more. Temari grit her teeth, unwilling to just lose like this. So you will just offer me up like a lamb to be sacrificed? Wasn't there any other way? Baki shook his head sadly. I'm sorry Temari, but there was no other way. Do you think this order would have gotten passed if there was? Temari just wanted to scream her throat hoarse. So much injustice was being done to her, and she couldn't do anything about it. What was worse was that, they seemed to think she was the only one who could perform this duty, and they were right. Kankuro was too much of an idiot to do this, and the village would sooner sacrifice their shinobi than give up their Jinchuriki, never minding the fact that Gaara was a former blood-lusting psychopath, so there was a dense air of mistrust around him. She painfully reminded herself that a shinobi's duty is to endure and sacrifice for their village, no matter what the circumstances. I don't like this, but I know that I have to do my duty, sensei. Baki smiled sadly and nodded, that you do. Has my future husband been decided? Baki considered whether or not to tell her. However, before he could say anything, Gaara spoke up. I want to know as well, Baki. Okay, now there was no way to back out of this. Even though Gaara restrained himself greatly from killing anyone in his sight, Baki was not going to take a risk. Gaara's newfound protectiveness for his siblings was apparent, and it was nothing short of a miracle that he hadn't killed Baki for giving his sister away to Konoha, just like that. Clearing his throat, he simply answered the question. Yes. He sweat a little when he saw 3 sets of eyes looking at him expectantly. One was pure curiosity, the other was curiosity mixed with suspicion, and the last one was impatience and rage, combined with acceptance. You can guess who they are. Temari tapped her foot in irritation. Well, out with it. Who is it? Baki took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. He is the same person who defeated Gaara. You may know him as Namikaze Naruto. Temari blinked, and blinked again. And blinked again. Her thoughts drifted back to her hot, make-out session with the blonde in the alley. She didn't realize it, but her face was slowly turning red enough to give Gaara's hair a run for its money. Baki frowned in concern. Temari. I see. I have a lot to think about, sensei. I'll see you later. Completely unlike her, Temari turned and hastily walked away, leaving a confused audience behind her. Baki had a puzzled expression. Temari never acted like this before. But then again, this situation is a first for her, so this might have prompted a new response as well. He turned to the other two, you two are dismissed as well. You best leave her alone for a while. This is a very big and sudden decision she has been forced to agree to. It's best if she gathers her thoughts for a while. With that, Baki left. Gaara turned to Kankuro, a very rare, confused expression on his face. Kankuro, do you know why Ne-san left? Kankuro shrugged in confusion, even I don't know Gaara. You can never know what's going on in women's heads. Temari hastily made her way to the training ground that was reserved only for the Kazekages, however as the children of a cage, they got access to it without any problem. She made her way to her favorite spot, on the lowest branch of one of the few trees that were in the training grounds. She climbed onto the branch, and finally let out the giggle she had been keeping inside her. It's so surreal. I mean, what are the odds? I never imagined that this would happen. The giggles receded and a soft smile to its place as she gazed at the setting sun. She still couldn't wrap her head around it. She was going to get married to Naruto of all people. The same Naruto who she had feelings for, and had only grown from the time she had come back to Suna. In all honesty, she never thought that she could form a relationship with him as much as she wanted to, and she pretty much believed that he thought the same. She was of Suna and he was of Konoha. But it was almost as if the universe wanted to prove both of them wrong, but for the good. Then the confusion and hesitance hit her, with a pinch of insecurity. Was she really ready to get married? No. Granted, she did have, dare she say, strong feelings for the blonde, but were they strong enough that she could happily live with him as a permanent partner? She didn't know that. Was she ready to make this sort of commitment so early in her life? Her feelings for Naruto and her duty as a kunoichi of her village were making her thoughts nothing less than a mess. Would Naruto be happy that he would have to spend his whole life bonded to her as her husband? What if he isn't happy? She groaned as she rubbed her head, trying to make some sense out of the mess that was her mind. In attempt to block out the incoming headache, she diverted the train of thought to the political implications of the marriage. She was the daughter of the Yondaime Kazekage, and Naruto was the only son of the Yondaime Hokage, arguably the most dangerous man the leaf had ever produced, and it was clear as drinking water that Naruto was well on his way to claim that title for himself. The marriage between two children of two cages was sure an effective way to cement an alliance between two villages. Not only that, but her interest in Naruto had led her to attempt to study his background when she was back in Suna. Shocked was an understatement, to say the least. She had known that Naruto went by the surname of Uzumaki, so she researched that first. Interestingly, that was the name of the clan that was cousins with the legendary Senju clan, and allies of Konoha. The Uzumaki clan lived in Uzushiogakure no Sato, the land hidden in whirlpools. But it was wiped out in the last war, with the combined efforts of Kumo and Iwa. But apparently there was a survivor, who made it to Konoha and married the Yondaime to give birth to Naruto. Of course, since there was only one survivor, the clan was then given a seat in the council, as a gesture of the friendship they used to have with the village. Which meant that Naruto was now the sole heir of the Uzumaki clan, soon to be head, because of undoubtedly making Chunin. Another shocking fact was that Naruto was the head of two clans, not one. It was no secret that the person who becomes a Kage, his name is automatically granted clan status. In essence, Naruto was the soon-to-be head of Namikaze clan as well. He would become a very powerful figure in village politics, with two clan seats backing him. That was a lot of power and responsibility for a single person. She thought with some relief that he would have her to share the responsibilities. He wouldn't have to be alone in that. Finally her thoughts took a turn that was long coming. Her face turned red as she suddenly thought about the implications of her marriage to Naruto. More specifically, what they have to do on their wedding night. Temari's entire face went the shade of Gaara's hair red. She recalled what they had done in the alley that night, her and Naruto. The places his hands had touched. She let out an embarrassed squeal as she put her face in hands. Why was she getting so embarrassed? It didn't make any sense. In the end, her thoughts came to this. While she was happy that she was getting to marry someone like Naruto and not some snob, like the Uchiha, she wanted to see if the bond that was there between them had the potential to grow stronger or not. Whether both of them were truly capable of loving each other or not. And she wouldn't say no to any more naughty things that happened between them along the way, that helped reinforce that bond. Nope, not at all. Tsunade watched amused, did Shizune, as both Naruto and Jiraiya quarreled like children. This was the first time she was seeing Naruto get so heated in an argument so childish such as this. Lame as hell, mind you. You are always going on and on and on, about how you're such an awesome shinobi. And yet, you got nailed by her perverted attack. Exclamation mark. You arrow senin. Uru sai. The two of them were literally butting heads, teeth grounding audibly. Naruto was the first to back off, a smirk on his face. It felt good to act childish once in a while, especially when he is making fun of his perverted godfather. You know I'm right, Arrow Senin. You know Naruto, that's quite an apt nickname for Jiraiya, Tsunade chuckled in mirth. Jiraiya's head instantly dropped in depression. Naruto nodded graciously. In all honesty, I never really thought about it. It simply came out of my mouth at the moment. The journey back to Konoha had been covered in very high spirits. Tsunade finally had an air around her that felt like the Hokage she was about to become. Soon enough, the gates of Konoha came within their sight, the size of an ant. Jiraiya scoffed, HMPH. You people have no respect for me. He received 3 deadpan stares at the same time, causing him to chuckle nervously as he rubbed the back of his head. Naruto turned his head away, spotting the gates of Konoha in the distance. All of a sudden, a thought popped into his head, causing him to grin challengingly. Both Tsunade and Shizune noticed the grin, and knew a devious thought had just taken root in the crazy mind of Uzumaki Naruto. Hey, Arrow Senin. The call caused Jiraiya to almost cry at him in indignance, but stopped when he noticed the grin on that face. What's on your mind, Gaki? Naruto pointed his index finger in the direction of the gates. You can see them, right? The 3 of them had to squint a little, but nodded after a moment. We've reached. What about it? Naruto's smirk could have put almost every Anbu in Konoha on alert. Care for a race? Just you and me. Jiraiya laughed haughtily and said, "Brat. You are 100 years too young to even challenge the like of me." But then he added with a cocky smile, "But I wouldn't mind showing you just how inferior you are." "Excuse me," an irritated voice cut into their challenge and both turned to face an annoyed Tsunade, her right hand cocked on her hip and foot tapping the ground in irritation. Shizune simply stood behind her, not knowing what to do. "I hope you weren't planning to forget that we are here too." Naruto's face suddenly changed into a completely innocent expression, something that caused Tsunade to stiffen in guard. She rather preferred his devious expression rather than this. At least that look suited him. This look almost had her convinced that Naruto was a completely innocent boy. "Oh no, not at all." Naruto denied with a shake of his head as he took off his backpack, holding it out to Tsunade, who raised an eyebrow in question. Naruto just put his hand forward. "Just hold it for a second please." Tsunade begrudgingly took the backpack and slung it over her right shoulder, only because the brat said please though. She was confused when Naruto then walked around her so that he was standing right behind her and Shizune. "You are a part of this race as well. In fact," he slung his hands over the shoulders of both of them, "you both are the referees." With that, he flashed them to the marker he had put on the gates of Konoha. Naruto turned to Jiraiya, who shook his head and said, "Tsunade will beat you into the ground for not warning her." Naruto waved dismissively, "She won't. Even if she attempts to do that, she's way too slow to catch someone as fast as me. Also, a shinobi must always be on guard." Jiraiya snorted but said nothing. He liked this characteristic of Naruto. The kid didn't give a damn about who wanted to beat him and had the balls and skills to pull off such a stunt. He picked up a pebble and bounced it in his hand. "You ready?" Naruto came to stand beside him, having deactivated the resistance seals for this. "Ready when you are." Jiraiya flicked his finger, sending the pebble flying into the air. The both tensed as it neared the ground, and as soon as it touched the ground, they both disappeared. Tsunade and Shizune blinked as they suddenly found themselves standing right at the gates of Konoha. The gate guards, Izumo and Katetsu, blinked in shock as they found themselves suddenly staring at one of the legendary figures of Konoha. Senju Tsunade was not only considered the strongest kunoichi in the elemental nations, but also the most beautiful as well. And right now they found themselves scared, for her beautiful face was angry as hell. Tsunade clenched her fist and snarled, "That brat. Didn't even give me a warning and forcing me into this petty race." However, her rant was cut off as two dust clouds rapidly made their way to her position. Remembering why Naruto had sent her here like this, she grudgingly kept an eye on them, ready to see who was winner. Both figures shot post her right into the village, leaving a surprised Tsunade and Shizune. They had both seen who was the winner. Of course, there was little doubt. Jiraiya huffed as he tried to catch his breath, looking at an equally huffing Naruto. The brat had almost beat him. His reflexes were as scary as ever, for Naruto had dashed as soon as the stone was a millimeter above the ground, with Jiraiya immediately dashing after. If not for the flex of his chakra near the end, he would have totally lost. Would you look at that? Jiraiya almost lost to a 13-year-old. Both of them turned to see a smirking Tsunade walking up to them, carelessly throwing Naruto's bag at him. Jiraiya looked away petulantly. "But I didn't. Also, I was carrying extra luggage." Naruto slung his bag. "I will concede to my defeat. You are better than me, Ero Sennin. For now at least." Jiraiya's triumphant smirk faltered at the end of Naruto's sentence. Of course, he planned on taking the brat on a training trip sometime later, and he had no doubts that Naruto would surpass him. Naruto faced the three of them. "All right, my mission finishes over here. I'll report tomorrow morning for debriefing, Ba-chan. Enjoy your walk of fame, Hokage-sama." He added teasingly before disappearing in a flash. Tsunade's eye twitched in irritation, before a small smile of fondness came onto her face. He may look like his father, and even act like him most of the time, but he sure has his mother's moments as well. With that, they made their way to the Hokage Tower. Naruto wasn't wrong. People were not discreet at all when they saw two of the Sannin walking together, one of which had returned from an absence of almost a decade and a half. Tsunade found herself smiling against her will as she gazed upon the home of her precious people once again. People were smiling in relief, after seeing two powerful shinobi of Konoha walking through the streets. Things were still a bit shaky among the civilians, but Tsunade's appearance might cause them to settle back down, Jiraiya mused. As they reached towards the Hokage's tower and in a few minutes, the Hokage's office, Tsunade found herself having an epiphany. It hit her that she really had missed her sensei. Jiraiya saw this and allowed her a few moments to collect herself. Tsunade took a few deep breaths to calm herself down. When she was ready, she raised a slightly shaking hand and knocked the door 3 times. Enter. The same, raspy old voice that she had heard since her genin days, full of wisdom, gave the command. Tsunade opened the door and was greeted with what she should have expected, but still filled her with a strange amount of relief and nostalgia. Sarutobi Hiruzen was sitting at the Hokage's desk, doing paperwork. His eyes lifted up and widened in surprise. He slowly put down his writing brush, and stood up, never wavering his eyes from Tsunade. When he spoke, his voice conveyed suffering and relief, at the same time. Tsunade. Tsunade herself was finding it hard to rein in her tears. It hit her once again. If it hadn't been for Naruto, Hiruzen would not have been standing here right now. He would either have been in a hospital or worse, buried in a grave, 6 feet under the ground. I'm back, sensei. Tsunade said as she gave the old man a watery smile. It seemed that she had missed him more than she had thought. Sarutobi was more than just a sensei to her. He had been more like a father to all of her team. He nurtured them with his own 2 hands. He might have been tough as hell, but at the end of the day, he treated Team 7 like his own children. To her surprise, he laughed. Laughed hard, and Jiraiya and the Anbu in the room stared open-mouthed, for that was the heartiest laugh they had heard from the Hokage in years. Finally, when he stopped laughing, he said, I'm so happy to see you back, Tsunade. He gave the signal to his guards to give them some privacy. Once they had left, he sealed the room completely. He then walked around the table and pulled out his secret stash of sake from the fake compartment in his drawer. He took out 3 cups and poured all of them a drink. He winked as he handed them the sake. I normally restrain myself, but I believe this occasion calls for some celebration. Tsunade smirked as she took her cup, followed by Jiraiya. They clinked their cups together and drank it all in one gulp, with Tsunade giving it an approving nod. Nice sake. Hiruzen smirked. Being Hokage has privileges, you know. Jiraiya sighed happily as he refilled and drank once again. I should have invited the Gaki to drink with us. After all, he winked at his teammate, he performed his first S-rank mission quite impressively. Hiruzen made a sound of realization. Ah yes. We should have called him. To celebrate his first successful mission as a Jonin, that 2S rank. I knew I made a correct choice in promoting him. I want your report on this, Jiraiya. I know Naruto's will reach to me by tomorrow morning. Jiraiya nodded, will do, sensei. Tsunade frowned, how do you know that his report will reach you tomorrow morning? He said that in front of us, not you. Hiruzen smiled, it has been his habit ever since he started doing missions. He always gives in his report a day after the mission is completed. A very peculiar habit though, if I do say so myself. I never quite found out the reason why. He walked around his table, however, he has been very consistent, so I have no reason to doubt that he wouldn't deliver it tomorrow morning. Before they could continue catching up and discussing about Naruto, there was a knock at the door. All 3 of them gave the door an annoyed look, before Sarutobi put his sake away, sitting back on his chair. Tsunade and Jiraiya stood in front of his desk, as there were no chairs for them to sit on. Hiruzen unsealed the privacy seals and called his Anbu back. Once they were back in their positions, he gave the order. Enter. Hiruzen and Jiraiya were able to keep their faces blank, however Tsunade's tongue soured as she took in the arrivals. The elders, Homura and Kaharu, had been her least favorite people when she was a genin and chunin under her sensei. She schooled her expression as they bowed to her. Welcome back, Tsunade-sama, they bowed. Even though the respect was shown, she still considered them highly annoyed. A pair of old, senile fools completely set in their ways of thinking. They were also quite assertive, wanting their opinion to be the only decision there is, despite of them only being advisors to the Hokage. They also believed that they knew best, if she remembered correctly. She would have to talk to sensei about doing something about them. They should have retired quite some time ago. They looked above from their bow and then turned their attention to the Hokage, completely ignoring the other Sannin in the room. Of course, Jiraiya had no problem in returning the favor. He never liked them in the first place, and they fell from his eyes even more when he heard from Hiruzen just how vocal they had been against Naruto's promotion to Chunin, let alone Jonin, even if he was deserving. Hokage-sama, now that Tsunade-sama is here, perhaps we should brief her on the recent happenings and news from Sunagaku. Homura's suggestion earned a nod from Hiruzen and a questioning eyebrow from Jiraiya and Tsunade. Hiruzen took out a scroll from his drawer and handed it to his successor. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this, Tsunade. Jiraiya moved closer to Tsunade to read over the contents of the scroll. Both their eyebrows rose in surprise and incredulity as they finished reading it. Shocked looks were sent to the old Hokage, who sighed and said, I have already given my approval to this. They made an offer that would have been otherwise foolish to refuse. Jiraiya pulled Tsunade to the side to whisper to her, this is ridiculous. They can't do this to a clan head, can they? Tsunade's eyes widened a bit at that. She had forgotten that after becoming Jonin, Naruto had essentially become clan head to Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. In all but official capacity. She grudgingly said, he hasn't been officially appointed as such and has yet to take his seat at the council. This wouldn't have been possible if he had been clan head in official capacity without his permission, but since he's not, it could be, sorry, has been done. He can't refuse the order of the Hokage, Jiraiya. Jiraiya frowned, obviously not liking the notion that his sensei dictated the life of his godson like this. Naruto would now have to marry someone from another village for his duty. He would never get a shot at love on his own. But like Tsunade said, Naruto was not in any capacity to refuse. Tsunade did not like this as well. She had slowly taken a liking to Naruto on their way back to Konoha, and she saw what kind of a person Naruto was. He did not deserve to be treated like this. She racked her brain, trying to see the positive side to this. After a few moments, a stray thought caused her to back up and a small smile formed on her face. She faced the Hokage and the elders. The full council has agreed to this. Hiruzen nodded in affirmative. The elders nodded as well. Hi. Her smile turned into a small grin. She needed to double check if her sensei had thought this through from all angles or not, before making his decision. Does the council also believe that Suna is aware of Naruto's heritage? Hiruzen frowned and looked at Jiraiya in confusion, who cursed mentally and gave him an apologetic look. He turned back to Tsunade. It seems that Jiraiya forgot to tell you what happened in the Chunin exams, Tsunade. Naruto publicly announced his heritage. It is safe to assume by now, all the elemental nations know just who Naruto is. Tsunade gave an annoyed look to Jiraiya, who rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Deciding that she would deal with him later, she asked them her next question. Then am I to assume that the council has also thought about the domestic ramifications of Naruto's marriage? Her grin widened when a look of confusion passed among the elders, Jiraiya and her sensei. However, Sarutobi's eyes widened as he caught on to the meaning of her question. An expression passed over his face as he viciously cursed himself for not thinking about this sooner, but then a grin passed over his face when he realized what it meant for Naruto. Jiraiya was a little slow to catch up, but then too grinned when he came to the same realization as her and sensei. The elders still hadn't caught up to them. Koharu spoke for both of them. We're not sure what you mean, Tsunade-sama. With a smirk worthy to match Naruto's indeviousness, she explained. When Naruto marries, he will officially have claimed his position as the head of both Namikaze and Uzumaki clans. Meaning he will inherit everything from both of those clans including funds, property and land in those clans' possessions. That also includes the seats of both the clans on the council. Surely you realized this before sending the reply. The faces of both the elders had dropped in dismay. They never realized that by marrying off Naruto, they were pushing for him to become clan head for two clans. How could they have overlooked something as important as this? Hiruzen was enjoying the looks on the faces of his former teammates' faces. To add into their dismay, he added with a chuckle, of course, I should have realized this when I appointed him as a Jonin. Homura's and Koharu's faces showed horror by now. They had completely overlooked the fact that a person becomes eligible for head of clan position upon becoming a Chunin or Jonin. They were too biased against Naruto, too focused on trying to keep him under their control that they lost sight of other things. They should have realized this the moment Hiruzen appointed him a Jonin. Naruto was already clan head long before this discussion was taking place. It just needed to be officialized. Hiruzen looked entirely too amused. It seems you need a moment, Homura and Kaharu. Perhaps you would like to step outside the room. Me and my students have a few things to catch up on. The elders walked out of room in a daze. The three of them finally let loose their chuckles, or in Jiraiya's case, laughter. Jiraiya said as he calmed down, "It's about time someone taught them a lesson." Hiruzen smirked as he looked at his student. "Looks like I made the right choice in choosing my successor. You know you're worthy if you were able to outsmart them." However, the atmosphere turned serious when Jiraiya brought up another concern. "However, we must not overlook the consequences of Naruto revealing his heritage." Hiruzen and Tsunade immediately caught on to what he was saying. The former had been worrying about this for a long time. Minato's enemies now had a new target to focus on. If they couldn't get revenge on the Yondaime, they would take it out on their son. Naruto had flashed to his apartment and immediately disassembled his backpack. After taking a very satisfying hot water shower in his bathroom, he cooked himself fish, rice and eggs. Preservative seals were oh so awesome. After he finished his meal, he sat on the couch and put on a movie. He wondered on what to do. After finishing an S-rank mission, it was mandatory for the shinobi to at least take a week of leave, maximum 2 weeks. However, Naruto knew he was quickly going to get bored of doing nothing for a week straight. He mentally recounted what he couldn't do. He was in no mood to work on seals right now. Training was out of the question, because he had just returned from a mission. He had nothing to read, and he had no video games, for he was firm of the belief that they rot your mind. "You sure are acting like a brat right now, you know," came the voice from within. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Not all of us can sleep on a whim like you, Kurama. You are sleeping almost all the time when you have nothing to do." Naruto heard a scoff. "Whatever brat. What I want to say is you could seek your pineapple-headed friend for a game of shogi. Good exercise for your feeble, human mind." Naruto ignored the insult as he thought about the suggestion. It was not bad at all, and he would have fun teasing Shikamaru about his added duties as well. He got up from the couch and went to his room to change clothes. A minute later, he emerged in something casual. A dirty white, long-sleeves t-shirt folded to his elbows, with dark blue jeans. Over the t-shirt, he wore a black shirt with buttons open, sleeves folded till elbows. The necklace Tsunade had given him hung out of his t-shirt. All in all, he looked as cool as a breeze. He stepped outside of his building and began a slow walk, having located the chakra signature of his friend in the training ground 10. He allowed his feet to carry him as he thought about the possible changes that could happen now that Tsunade was back. On the way back, Jiraiya had once told him that Tsunade had once asked Sarutobi permission to start a medic training program. However, it was wartime, and there weren't enough shinobi to spare for the training program, not to mention the lack of interest on the part of many shinobi. So lost he was in his thoughts that he failed to notice the appreciative looks from the female population that were being sent in his direction. Girls that were 8 to 9 years old were blushing while looking at him while the girls his age were shamelessly checking him out. But again, he was too lost in his thoughts to really notice that. He was about to turn towards the training grounds when he sighed. This was getting boring very fast. "Come out, Konohamaru. I won't tell you a second time." As soon as he had shouted, a brown-haired boy darted around the corner, and came running over to him. "Naruto Ni-chan. Play ninja with me." That earned him a harsh finger flick, right in the center of the forehead. Konohamaru yelped, immediately rubbing the spot. Naruto looked at his unofficial charge with some amusement. Konohamaru wanting to play ninja with him was a common request by now. But since today was a day on which Naruto had nothing to do, why not give a few life lessons to the kid? Teach him the real meaning of being a ninja. Konohamaru was immediately indignant. What was that for? "I won't be playing ninja with you today, Konohamaru," came the bored reply. Then he frowned. "Also, aren't you supposed to be in the academy right now?" Indeed, it was only noon right now, so the young Sarutobi should have been having lunch in his class. Konohamaru crossed his arms and pouted, "Uruka-sensei's lessons are very boring." Naruto let out a small chuckle. "You aren't wrong in saying that. However, his face adopted a stern expression. That excuse is not enough for you to skip classes. They are teaching you things that will allow you to survive as a shinobi. Even I found those classes dreadfully boring, but I always followed what was going on. No need to tell the kid that he skipped quite a few classes himself because of his stupidity act. Of course, he had also been way ahead of his class. Also, you should start training seriously instead of playing ninja in your free time. It is never too early for a shinobi to start training on chakra control. Konohamaru frowned. Does this mean you will no longer play ninja with me? Naruto sighed, trying to decide how to best explain this. He looked around, thoughts running wild, when he spotted the Hokage monument. An idea sprang into his head, and without giving any warning to the kid, he grabbed his shoulder and flashed away. Konohamaru blinked when he suddenly found himself standing over the head of the Yondaime. He shrieked and backed off, only to collide with something solid. Turning back, he saw the face of Naruto, looking over the village. Being a ninja is not a game, Konohamaru, Naruto said softly, looking into the eyes of his charge. Sure, kids can play, but in the world that we grow up, it is best not to treat it as a game. He sat down, pulling the kid down with him. Konohamaru sat beside his idol and frowned, not understanding what Naruto was trying to say. What do you mean, Naruto-ni-chan? Naruto did not look away from the village. Let me ask you something, Konohamaru. What do you think it means to be a shinobi? Konohamaru opened his mouth to answer, and stopped. He thought really hard, something he very rarely did. It was obviously a question that had a deep answer. He thought and thought, but the answer was lost to him. To be a shinobi means to endure. A shinobi is the one who can follow or lead others into any darkness and work together to overcome that darkness and make it out the other side. A shinobi walks towards danger when everyone else is running away. That is because it is the duty of a shinobi to look at any foe and say, bring it. That is because shinobi exist to protect those who can't protect themselves. Naruto recited the same answer that Gigi had given to him years ago. The answer had a deep and profound effect on him. It was one of the main reasons he pushed himself so hard every day to get strong, so he could protect his loved ones. He hoped it would have the same effect on Konohamaru. The said boy was deeply thinking about Naruto's answer. He had never thought like that, always thinking it is a game, that being a shinobi meant to throw cool jutsu around. He had never imagined there would be such a deep reason behind what being a shinobi meant. Only one thing came to his mind right now. Why are you telling me this? Your grandfather almost lost his life in the invasion. The words were like a splash of cold water down Konohamaru's spine. The announcement filled him with dread, which was visible in a violent shiver on the outside. What? How? Naruto gave an expressionless look to the boy. He acted like a true shinobi. I told you, didn't I? Being a shinobi is not a game, a Hokage less so. Konohamaru viciously tried to hold back his tears upon hearing the news of his grandfather. He had never known about this. Why was Naruto-ni-chan telling him all of this? Exclamation mark. To teach you a lesson, came the answer, almost as if Naruto had read his thoughts. I am telling you this to teach you a lesson, Konohamaru. You want to become Hokage, don't you? At the mention of his ultimate goal, Konohamaru hastily wiped his tears off. Why yeah. Naruto stood up, brushing his pants. Then start taking your training seriously. Not too much, though. Take ample time to rest and relax, so your body can appropriately recover as well. Eat healthy food in ample amounts, without hesitating. Just don't joke around when it comes to your duties as a shinobi, alright? Konohamaru stood at attention, determination coursing through him. Hi, Naruto-ni-chan. Naruto smiled and ruffled the boy's hair. Good. And if you need any help on how to properly train, don't hesitate to ask. Become a shinobi first, then I'll tell you what it means to be Hokage, alright? Konohamaru smiled and nodded. He would make his brother and grandfather proud of him, by becoming a true shinobi. Hi, Naruto-ni-chan. But don't you forget this, he pointed a finger at the blonde challengingly, we are still rivals for Hokage. Naruto chuckled, that's the spirit. Now let's get you back to the academy. He put a hand on Konohamaru's shoulder and flashed to the only person in the academy who had his Hiraishin seal on himself. Iruka sat annoyed at his desk as the lunch hour slowly came to an end. He had finished his lunch in the first 15 minutes, and spent the rest of the hour thinking about the latest menace of his class, the grandson of Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Konohamaru. The boy almost always made trouble for him, even more so than what Naruto did while he was in the academy. One would think that Iruka would have some experience in dealing with troublesome kids like Konohamaru because of having the resident prankster of Konoha as a former student, but no. Just as the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch hour, he almost fell on his back while sitting in his chair when two people appeared so suddenly in front of him. After recollecting himself, his eyes widened when he recognized the two people. The short one was easy because it was his rampant student, who had ditched class because he was too bored. The other one took a moment because Iruka had never seen Naruto look so cool. Naruto smiled and greeted his former teacher, brother figure. It had been a very long time since he had talked to Iruka. "How's it going, Iruka-sensei?" "Well, if it isn't Naruto." Iruka was very pleasantly surprised to see his former, favorite student. It had really been a long time for both of them. "Iruka-sensei, I'm just here to return Konohamaru in your care." Naruto gestured to his young shinobi in making, who was looking all kinds of depressed at being stuck in Iruka's boring lectures. Of course, sudden appearance of strangers was bound to attract the student's attention, who began to excitedly chatter. Naruto took note of this and gave an apologetic smile to Iruka. "We'll talk later, okay Iruka-sensei. I won't be disturbing your class any more than they already are." With that, he vanished in a blue flash, leaving a dumbfounded Iruka to wonder that since when was Naruto capable of doing something like that. Naruto appeared back at the head of his father. Suddenly, he didn't feel like doing anything at all. Deciding to rest for a while, he laid down, using his jacket to cover his face from the sunrays. Maybe, he would just laze around today. As he drifted off, he absently wondered if this is what Shikamaru felt every day. Sakura was humming the tune of her favorite song as she walked into Sasuke's hospital room. She had been daily checking up on Kakashi and Sasuke. Of course, that is not to say that she was still a hardcore fangirl. She had ditched those ways long ago, thanks to her blonde teammate. She still pined after him, hoping that he would someday accept her love. Over the course of the past few weeks, she had ample time to train and visit her sensei and teammate, though she missed the presence of Naruto. Team 7 had almost become a second family to her, and that family was incomplete, which left her feeling incomplete. She had gone to the Sandaime many times during the blonde's absence, to inquire when he would return. The old Hokage's answer had been the same every time, that Naruto was away on a very important mission for the village. Every time, she had returned home unsatisfied with his answer. She continued her visits to Kakashi and Sasuke, hoping that at least one of them would wake up and talk back to her. On that note, she had noticed something strange between Naruto and Sasuke. Ever since the second phase of the Chunin exams, Naruto had become a little more cautious when he was around Sasuke. It was understandable, given how Sasuke had viciously attacked him back in the forest, but Sasuke deserved the benefit of doubt, given the strange energy that had been coursing through him. What Sakura hadn't realized that she had unintentionally used the cursed seal as an excuse for what went wrong for Sasuke. While the situation in the forest certainly put the blame on the curse mark correctly, she wouldn't realize until it would be too late that she would slowly, but steadily, start blaming every aspect of Sasuke's negative behavior on the curse mark. She opened the door to Sasuke's room. She frowned when she saw two people that she didn't recognize. One was a white-haired man, rather tall and looked to be around 50 years old, leaning against the far wall of the room with his arms crossed, looking at the room's second strange occupant. She was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s, with her blonde hair in two pigtails over a green jacket with the kanji for gambler written on it. The woman was holding her hands near Sasuke's head, a green glow emanating from her hands which Sakura recognized to be medical chakra. "Always mind your surroundings, Sakura," came a voice from her behind. She spun around, eyes widened on being startled like that. Naruto was leaning on the side of the door such that anyone opening the door would see him the last. She put her hand on her chest, breathing heavily as she recovered from the shock. Earlier, she would have just punched him in the head for scaring her like that, but Naruto had made it pretty clear how he felt about that before their bell test. Don't scare me like that, Naruto, she said, her heartbeat now back to normal. Naruto shrugged and started eating an apple that he pulled out from somewhere. You should not drop your guard when entering a room, he advised while happily munching on the juicy apple. Nevertheless, she smiled and said, it is good to have you back, Naruto. Naruto smirked and merely nodded in reply, his mouth full of apple. She then turned to the woman, but smiled wide when she saw that Sasuke was groggily waking up. She ran over to hug him, thoughts of other occupants in the room fleeing her mind. Naruto shook his head in mild disappointment as he finished his apple. He didn't understand why Sakura pined after the Uchiha so much when he didn't even reciprocate her feelings. He tossed the remains of the apple into the dustbin and walked over to the bed. Now that pretty boy here is awake, I'd like to introduce some people. Sasuke glared at Naruto for his choice of words. To his credit, the blonde ignored him entirely. Sakura thankfully released him from the constricting hug and turned to him, confusion swimming in her green eyes. Naruto waved towards Jiraiya. He is Jiraiya of the Sannin, the toad sage from Mount Myoboku, and don't you start it. The last part was said harshly to the white-haired man, who was about to start another one of his kabuki dances. You ruined my introduction, Naruto. No, you do that quite spectacularly yourself, Naruto muttered to himself before coughing into his fist, turning to Sakura. She had wide eyes as she looked upon one of the most powerful shinobi in the entire world. It is an honor to meet you, Jiraiya-sama. Jiraiya grinned at the respect he was given, not hearing Naruto's mutter, trust me, it's not. Naruto turned Sakura around with a hand on her shoulder, ignoring her protests of how she wanted to talk more to him. Naruto waved her protests away, don't worry. You'll be seeing a lot more of him in the future. Trust me on that. Sakura frowned disapprovingly at Naruto. But before she could voice it, Naruto introduced her to the woman in the room. This lady here, is Senju Tsunade, the slug Sannin and the one who woke Sasuke up from his coma. Sakura instantly had stars in her eyes as she was introduced to the strongest kunoichi in the elemental nations and the idol of all kunoichis in Konoha. Tsunade-sama, she hurriedly bowed, it is such an honor to meet you. She did not raise her head after the bow in the name of respect, though she was confused when Tsunade-sama suddenly spoke to Naruto. See that brat? That is how you respect someone like me. Naruto snorted derisively, whatever you say, granny. Only because she was in a hospital did she not punch the brat through the walls. While this was going on, Jiraiya was restraining his sniggers, Sakura was berating Naruto for disrespecting a Sannin, and Sasuke was blankly looking at the bickering between his teammate and the ridiculously busty woman. Seriously, look at the size of that. His hands would not even cover half. She is also our next Hokage. Naruto's voice broke Sasuke out of his rare, once in a while, perverted thoughts. Thankfully, no one had seen him gazing at the breasts of Senju Tsunade. Sakura frowned as she looked at the enormous bust of the blonde woman with slight jealousy. Then she self-consciously looked at her own chest. Her chest was nothing compared to that bust, and she doubted it ever would be. Then she backpedaled, wait. What do you mean, next Hokage? Naruto elaborated, Sandaime-sama had sent me an arrow Sennin here, he pointed to the indignant sage, to retrieve her, he pointed at the annoyed blonde, to become the next Hokage when he steps down. Also, I brought her back so she could heal Sasuke and Kakashi. He turned to Sasuke, you're welcome, by the way. Sasuke glared at the slightly smirking blonde. He was acting way too cocky for his liking. He looked down at his hands, hating the weakness he was feeling right now. He clenched his fist as he thought about just how he ended up in this hospital. Tsunade sighed and turned to Naruto. I need to see you in the Hokage's office the first thing tomorrow morning, Naruto. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Is it a new mission for me? Tsunade mentally smirked. Oh, it's a mission all right. Outward, she said, you can think of it as a long-term mission. Naruto looked perplexed for a moment, then recovered, going back to his bored look. I just recently became a Jonin, you know. Wouldn't a long-term mission be more suited for someone with a little more experience than me in the field? Tsunade waved his worries away as she walked to the door. You wouldn't know how to handle a long-term mission if you don't try it. Besides, this mission is especially for you. Only you can do it. With those words, Tsunade left the room. Jiraiya coughed and walked towards the window. Perching on the windowsill, he turned and grinned at his apprentice. Yash, Naruto. I'll leave you with your team to catch up a bit. Got some research to take care of. With that, he was gone. Awkward silence reigned for a few moments, as neither one of them could figure out what to say. Sakura was the first to break the silence with a nervous chuckle. So, Naruto, can you tell us about your recent mission? Sasuke's head snapped up, remembering a piece of the conversation when Tsunade was in the room. You were gone with a Sannin, right? Naruto's bored expression betrayed nothing, but inside, he was curious. Why would Sasuke bring up that piece of the conversation? Yeah, actually. Though he is nothing like you can imagine, I assure you. In fact, both the Sannin are nothing like you are probably thinking, Naruto smirked in a lazy way. Sakura was confused. What do you mean? Naruto chuckled as he stood up to leave. It's definitely not my place to say. You know how it is, whatever you learn on a S-rank mission is confidential information, reserved only for the Hokage. No need to tell them that he knew that Jiraiya was a pervert long before they went on the mission. Also, he had noticed that Sasuke was showing signs of irritation that Sakura hadn't managed to notice. Twitching of his left eye, clenching of fist as if a dam was waiting to burst. He figured it was best if he and Sakura left. He had a feeling that whatever was going on in Sasuke's head, it was not good. Perhaps we should leave Sasuke to rest, Sakura, he said in a tone that was more of an order than a suggestion. Fortunately, there were very few bits and pieces of fangirl left in Sakura to rebel against him. Sakura looked like she didn't want to leave her crush alone, but a look from Naruto made her decision. With one last look to Sasuke, who was looking down, seemingly lost in his thoughts, she walked out of the room. She looked behind her to see that Naruto had walked out behind her and closed the door. It's best if we leave him to his thoughts for a while. He has a lot to think about his encounter with his brother, was the offered explanation, with a look that told her to keep quiet about this. Sakura's eyes widened, but Naruto ushered her away. Naruto closed the door and locked it with a subtle click. He turned to look at Sasuke, who had looked up to lock eyes with him. The shadow clone he had sent out with Sakura would keep her away from the conversation they were about to have. Naruto walked and closed the windows, pulling the curtains over. He pressed his hand to the wall, and seals erupted from it, spreading in a graceful pattern. After ensuring no one would eavesdrop on their conversation, he pulled a chair and sat down beside Sasuke's bed. Thank you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. It was rare for the Uchiha to initiate a conversation, even rarer for him to say such words. For what? For sending her away. She was beginning to get on my nerves, came the blank reply, but Naruto picked up the slight traces of annoyance. Both of them remained quiet for a while, lost in their thoughts, until Naruto spoke. It was rather commendable of you not to lose yourself back there, Naruto said with a tone of acknowledgement. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Did you get dumber or what? If I hadn't, I wouldn't be here right now. Naruto shook his head slightly. I'm not talking about your actions. I'm talking about the hiki on your neck. Its power is quite addictive, usually activated in the situations that you faced a few weeks ago. Very impressive that you did not. Sasuke grunted, not knowing how to reply to that. Silence descended upon them again, and this time, Sasuke broke it first. Back then, he began, causing Naruto to raise his head. I discovered just how much distance is between me and my brother. Naruto took careful note of the fact that Sasuke didn't sound angry, scornful at all. The tone was entirely blank, like he was simply stating a fact. And that worried him. The Sasuke Naruto knew would be burning with the desire for revenge in this situation. He would have done anything to get out of here, to bridge the gap between him and his brother by any means. Naruto knew Sasuke to be highly impulsive when it came to matters concerning his brother. Itachi was a name that rose the adrenaline levels in Sasuke faster than being in a fight. He wasn't allowed any more time to think because Sasuke's next question snapped him from his thoughts. Why was Itachi looking for you? Sasuke stared Naruto dead in his eyes. The kind of eyes that put Naruto on edge. Naruto carefully considered on how to answer. After all, this was Itachi they were talking about. You will find your answer if you remember the conversation we had before I left for my mission, Sasuke. He's after the Kyuubi, then. Naruto was surprised on the inside at how quickly Sasuke was able to connect the dots, but the surprise did not appear on his bored facade. He just nodded silently in reply. Not just the Kyuubi. Sasuke raised an eyebrow in question, but Naruto shook his head, clearly implying that he would not talk anymore on the subject. I'm starting to think this village can't help become as powerful as my brother. It was a mere mumble, something only meant for Sasuke's ears alone. But coupled with the silence of the room and Naruto's animalistic hearing, it was not discreet at all. For the first time in a long time, Naruto could honestly say he was truly shocked. He had just heard Sasuke contemplating on leaving the village, just to get more powerful, faster than what he was getting now. Sasuke was already a flight risk, but that was now nearing an edge that Naruto couldn't afford to tip. He had to stop this now. Everyone becomes powerful in their own pace, Sasuke. If you continue to forcefully push beyond the absolute limit, it will only result in a burnout. Naruto leant forward, and Sasuke froze when he looked into Naruto's eyes. They were frigid, freezing him in place, for he could not tear away his own. They reminded him of his brother's eyes, the same cold, detached, ruthless eyes. You think that this village should only cater to you and your needs. The question was clearly rhetorical, and was spoken barely above a whisper, but it was spoken with so much menace that Sasuke could not stop that shiver that violently passed through his body. Naruto, to Sasuke, had always been a laid-back guy who owned the word serious when the situation called for it. But this was a totally new side of the blonde that he was seeing right now. Make no mistake, Sasuke. The moment you put on the headband, the Hokage became the only person whose orders you have to ultimately follow. You now belong to the leaf, before you belong to the clan. Every clan in Konoha obeys this rule. I don't see why you think you are an exception. Naruto's posture was very relaxed. He was leaning back in his chair, left ankle over right knee, elbows on the armrest, chin resting on hands, mouth hidden and only eyes visible. Yet, there was something in the air around him that screamed of danger. You brother was a gem, Sasuke. A one of a kind. People might hail you as a genius, but even genius has class. Your genius cannot be compared to your brother's. Itachi's level of genius is something that only occurs once in many generations. If you think you can progress at the same speed that your brother did, you are dead wrong. Sasuke finally found his voice, and it quivered with rage. Are you saying I will never be able to kill my brother? Naruto's answer was short and precise, conveying exactly what he needed and nothing more. Just not now. Perhaps in a few years. Sasuke's rage only grew at the nonchalance of the answer. He hated when he wasn't taken seriously. Naruto stood up and walked over to the wall, laying his palm flat on it and disabling the seals on them. He turned to Sasuke, who looked only an inch away from snarling. I would stop that train of thought if I were you, Sasuke. Abandoning the village would give you nothing but a kill-on-sight order, he advised, causing Sasuke's rage to subside moderately, the Uchiha staring back at his hands with a blank gaze. Naruto turned back to Sasuke, causing the Uchiha to do a double take at the pleasant smile that adorned his face. It was as if he was back to his normal self, the previous second becoming a different person entirely. Well, Sasuke, get well soon. Naruto wished and was about to open the door to exit. If someone asked when he went back into Sasuke's room, he would just say that he forgot something and came to take it back. Naruto. The call stopped his hand on the handle. Removing it, he turned around and gave a questioning look to his former teammate. What would you do if I were to just run away? Naruto had to give credit to Sasuke to threaten his deserting so openly. Instead of answering the question, Naruto asked one of his own. You formed bonds when we were teammates, Sasuke. Bonds that were similar to the family that you once had. Ask yourself this, would you be willing to lose bonds like those a second time? Based on the widening of his eyes, Sasuke was totally unprepared for the question. Naruto made him realize just what Team 7 was to him now, making him doubt himself whether he could sever the bonds to just get revenge. Both their eyes snapped to the door when there was a click of the handle, before the door started opening. Naruto whispered to Sasuke, remember your friends, Sasuke. He was gone in a flash, the door swinging in the space where he was but a moment ago. A nurse appeared, looking concerned. Are you alright, Sasuke-san? I heard voices from your room. I was just talking to myself. Nothing to worry about, he assured the nurse. The nurse nodded and left, keeping the door open this time. Sasuke was still thinking about how Naruto had just outright threatened him. Not just that, but he had made it very clear that he was a very dangerous person. Sasuke hadn't even imagined or even dreamed that Naruto of all people had it in him to do it. Naruto made it clear that he would kill Sasuke if he had to protect Konoha. Sasuke glanced down in thought. He thought back to the conversation he had with Naruto before the blonde left for his mission. Naruto had bonds in this village, which he wanted to protect at all costs. Was that why he was so strong? Is that why he himself was not becoming as strong as he wanted to? Because he had nothing to protect. You have your friends, a part of his mind whispered at him. Sasuke frowned when he couldn't make sense out of his thoughts. One part of his mind whispered to him sweetly, saying that this village was only holding him back. Orochimaru had given him a way to get stronger, so he should take it. Another part of his mind said that he should remain in the village, grow stronger with his friends. He had already lost too many people, was he ready to lose more because of his desire for revenge? Or should he focus on revenge only? He didn't know which path to choose. Naruto came back from his daily morning run and made 3 clones to cook breakfast while he got refreshed for his meeting with the Hokage. After he was fully ready, he flashed right onto the roof of the Hokage tower, walking down rest of the way. He had been warned before not to directly flash into the Hokage's office, lest the Anbu mistake him for an enemy and kill him. He knocked on the door of the office and waited for the permission to enter. Once he heard Tsunade's voice from inside, he opened the door to find Tsunade standing beside the old man, who was seated in his chair. Looks like she is on a trial period until her official coronation, he thought as he closed the door behind him. Hiruzen and Tsunade straightened up a bit once they saw Naruto enter. He came to stand in front of them, expression bored but posture not as relaxed as to go hand in hand with his expression. He stood relaxed, but ready to act in an instant should any hostilities erupt. Tsunade felt quite bad for being one of the people to tell him that his love life was officially over before it even began. The kid didn't deserve it in her eyes. Hiruzen felt much worse than Tsunade, for he had been the one to make the decision to marry Naruto away without telling him. There were a few instances when he truly hated his position as the Hokage, for the decisions he had to make almost crushed his conscience with their weight. This was one of them. Naruto kicked off their conversation upon seeing the old folks weren't going to begin anytime soon. So, what's the mission? Hiruzen raised an eyebrow before turning to Tsunade with a questioning look. You told him it's a mission. Tsunade shrugged, it can be considered a long-term mission, can't it not? Hiruzen contemplated before shrugging himself. Well, you're not wrong. Anyways. He turned to Naruto with a most serious look on his face, making Naruto straighten on reflex. Naruto, first of all, I cannot express just how sorry I am to force you into this. I know there is no way I can ever earn back your trust and forgiveness after this. Naruto frowned in concern as he heard those words. He had never saw the old man look older than he really was. Plus those words rang alarm bells in his mind. Gigi had obviously done something that affected him in a very bad way and heavily blamed himself. So he did the only thing he could, steel himself and listen to whatever bad news the old man had landed him in. Perhaps he could still find a way out. What have you done? The words came out with more accusatory feeling than he intended, but they got the point across. Tsunade and Hiruzen flinched at the tone, and Tsunade, very slowly, took out a scroll from the desk drawer and held it out towards him. Naruto looked at the scroll with apprehension. Worst case scenario, they were kicking him out of the village for something he had apparently done. Then he would have to flee the village somehow and become a missing nin, who would then be on run from the Konoha hunter nin and Akatsuki. No pressure. He took it with calmness, without any show of fear, nervousness or anxiety. He opened the scroll and read it swiftly, his brain picking out the important sentences and points quickly. His first reaction was blankness. His mind went completely blank when he discovered that the scroll was a document stating that he was getting married to Sabaku no Temari from Suna. He was getting married, at 13 years of age. It was a surreal thought. Then his mind shifted to anger. Deep, unadulterated anger at the fact that the old man had just given him away like that, without asking for permission. It was completely uncalled on his part, not to mention, illegal. You can't just do that to clan head without asking for his permission. Clan business was serious business, so serious that even the Hokage only interfered when only absolutely necessary. Also, the old man had shot his chance at love with Temari like it was something he did every day. Was it not enough for him to have ruined his childhood? Exclamation mark. Then his mind caught up with his most recent thought. The old man had offered him in marriage to Sabaku no Temari. The same Temari, who wielded a huge fan, impressive wind style, badass attitude and the absolutely fabulous body, including those creamy, never-ending long legs. Exclamation mark. The same one. After his brain finally caught up with the facts, the final reaction followed. Joy bubbled inside him like lava in a volcano, but he used all the mental strength that he had garnered over the years to cap that from showing on his face. Still, some memories escaped from his grasp, such as his first ever make-out session, causing a noticeable blush to spread over his cheeks. He was getting married to the person he genuinely had feelings that had only grown for. Not just any girl. Hiruzen and Tsunade frowned in concern at his silent reaction, but confusion replaced that when they saw a blush spread over his cheeks. Why was the boy blushing? Something the matter, Naruto? Tsunade's question made Naruto look up at them, scroll suddenly forgotten in his hands. He had the perfect look of a kid with his hand caught in a cookie jar. Eyes wide, cheeks reddening with a blush and mouth open. Tsunade had her eyes slightly narrowed as she spoke to the younger blonde. Are you alright? Naruto, for the first time in a long time, was short of a response. He couldn't think of what to say, and felt extremely awkward. He coughed into his fist. Ahem. Yes, I'm fine. It's just that, I never expected this to happen. However, Tsunade's instincts to those sort of reactions were long honed over the years, thanks to having a teammate such as Jiraiya. She immediately knew that Naruto was hiding something big. He looked like he had past interactions with the daughter of the Kazekage. How does she know, you ask? Let's call it a woman's intuition. With an authoritative tone that Hiruzen would honestly say sounded like a mother suspicious of her child, Tsunade asked, no, commanded. I know you're hiding something, you ball of trouble, so spill. Naruto sputtered indignantly, I'm not a ball of trouble. Trouble knocks my door, not the other way around. Tsunade was now starting to get irritated. Don't change the topic, mister. What are you hiding? Naruto looked at the irritated face of Tsunade, and the morbidly curious face of his surrogate grandfather, and pondered on what to say. The fact that they were watching him like hawks was not helping at all. His mind raced over excuses that popped into his head, each being discarded in an instant. Damn it, what happened to the training of looking innocent after a prank? Naruto mentally sighed and looked away, mumbling something too low for the other two to hear. Tsunade cupped her ear. What did you say? We've met. Instantly, Tsunade knew that the answer was both true and false. True, because his defeated expression at her prodding was crystal clear, and false, because his blush said something else that he was not saying. Oh no 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 no. You are not getting away like that. I knew you did something more. What is it? Naruto looked very surprised that she somehow knew he was hiding something, and wondered if all the women were like this, knowing that something was being consciously hidden from them. He absently wondered if he would ever be able to hide something from Temari when they would get married and start living together. We might have. The rest was said in an incomprehensible mumble. For all his age and years as a Hokage, Hiruzen was dumbfounded to see such a sudden change in one of his shinobi. Naruto just went from a completely confident ninja to a shy, embarrassed one. He wondered if Naruto really had something big to hide or was he just embarrassed at being married away at such a young age. Tsunade's patience had just about reached its end. She walked up to Naruto and grabbed his collar, shaking him like a rag doll. Will you man up and just say it? Or do you enjoy keeping people in the suspense? Exclamation mark. Tell us or I'll really punch you into the next week. We have kissed, okay. The answer caught both of them off guard. Tsunade, for one, was not expecting this at all. This was something that was so entirely out of the blue that she was shell-shocked. Her grip on his collar loosened, and she stepped back, mouth open and eyes wide, unable to form a word. To hear that Naruto, the boy that she thought was as oblivious as his father used to be, had had a short-term, but romantic relationship with a girl, the same girl who her sensei had now given Naruto away to, was too much. She simply couldn't make sense of anything right now. The coincidence was almost like an act of fate. Hiruzen, on the other hand, was no better off. He had never, in his wildest thoughts, imagined that Naruto apparently had been in a relationship with the Kazekage's daughter. He then realized that Naruto could only have met Temari when the Sand siblings came here for the Chunin exams. He had always thought that Naruto was a serious child, dedicated to becoming stronger so that he could protect what was precious to him. He would have never thought Naruto might actually put time aside for some romance such as this. However, learning that Naruto already liked the selected bride, a great deal of weight was pulled off from his shoulders. He almost sank into his chair in relief like a melting ice cream. Finally, Naruto looked suspiciously at the other two in the room. It was clear who was the one who actually came up with this idea, but was it really that hard to believe that he had been in a temporary soon-to-be permanent romantic relationship? But then again, it was from the point of view of a third person. Maybe the reaction was to be expected. Right now though, he needed to get out of here. Can I leave? The question managed to snap the other two into attention. Before they could reply, Naruto had already flashed back to his apartment. There was silence for a few moments, broken then by Tsunade's chuckles. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at her, silently asking her why. Tsunade replied, "Who would have thought that the brat actually had a relationship with a girl? And you are marrying him off to the same girl." Hiruzen nodded, too relaxed right to speak. He was just glad that Naruto already had a relationship with the girl, so this won't be too tough on him. Well, that was a surprise. Naruto was sitting on the head of his father, looking over the village in the night. This was his favorite place to come whenever he wanted to think in silence. Right now, he had a shit-eating grin on his face. Damn right, it was. I hate to say this, but it was almost like an act of fate. I guess we should just leave it at that. Neither you nor I are capable of truly knowing just how this happened. Naruto shrugged. True. However, this is surreal that I'm getting married at such a young age, when I should be focused on getting stronger. But I'm glad that it happened with Temari. We both are. Speaking of getting strong, you need to get back into training. I want you to master my first tale by the end of this week. You've had enough rest. You got it, Kurama. Although, I wonder how Temari will be reacting to this piece of news. I'm sure she's just as overwhelmed as you are, Naruto. Perhaps more so than you. I'm wondering how Gaara would react, though. Naruto raised his eyebrows, whistling. Damn, you're right. Perhaps I should be worried about both of their reactions. Her brother though, he is a barrel of laughs. A loud snort echoed through his mind. You're right about that. When you really look at it, he really is just a boy in his sister's makeup, playing with dolls. This time, Naruto was the one who snorted. How do you know he wore Temari's makeup? Would any self-respecting male confess to having a makeup kit? Fair point. Naruto thought back to what he had read on the document, and automatically a grin curled up on his lips. The thought of marrying Temari, tasting those lips again, for the rest of his life. Hiruzen was just wrapping up his work in his office. Tsunade was to be announced as the Hokage tomorrow, so it had been a very busy day for him, not to mention giving Naruto the good news. He was about to shunshin to his clan compound when he heard it. Yahoo! It suspiciously sounded like a person he was used to seeing. Wow, it has been 2 days since my last update, and I find that it is much less stressful than delivering an update every day. That said, I hope you enjoyed the chapter. Sorry if the reactions were not up to what you were expecting, though. Even I felt I was a bit lacking. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.